Good morning. Welcome to morning meditation. It is great to have you with us this day. It is April Fool's Day, so be careful of that. But it is our last Friday. I guess next Friday is our last Friday, but we're drawing closer and closer to Palm Sunday, where we will move more deeply into that Holy Week theme. There are a number of ways to do the way of the cross, and I know you probably have many of them. But the one I want to do today is through the eyes of our Blessed Mother. And so I won't do like a full station, but I'll read the meditation and then play our Behold, Behold the Wood of the Cross. And just to try to enter in, but to give us that time to meditate. And so this is Mary's way of the cross that has been given us. I maybe should give credit. This is 23rd publication out of Connecticut. And I don't see the author. Oh, there's the author. Richard Fury. Blessings to him and his family. The first station, Jesus is condemned to death. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. It was early Friday morning when I saw my son. That was the first glimpse I had of him since they took him away. His bruised and bleeding skin sent a sword of pain deep into my heart, and tears down my cheeks. Then Pilate, from his chair of judgment, asked the crowd why they wanted my son executed. All around me shouted, "Crucify him." I wanted to plead with them to stop, but I knew this had to be, so I stood by and cried aloud.
Drinking this before bed lowers blood pressure by 26 points. If you're struggling with high blood pressure and you're
The second station, Jesus takes up his cross. Regaining a little strength, I walked with the crowds to the entrance of the square. A door flew open, and my son stumbled out, the guards laughing behind him. Two men dragged over a heavy wooden cross and dropped it on his shoulders. Then they shoved him down the road. My pain for him was unbearable. I wanted to take the cross from him and carry it myself. But I knew this had to be, so I walked on silently. The third station, Jesus falls the first time. I followed close behind my son as he stumbled toward Calvary. Nothing had ever hurt me more than to see him in such pain. I saw the cross digging into his shoulder. My heart dropped when I saw him fall, face to the ground, the heavy cross landing squarely on his back. For a moment, I thought my beloved son was dead. Now my whole body began to tremble. Then the guards kicked him. He rose slowly and began to walk again, yet they still whipped him. I wanted to protect him with my own body, but I knew this had to be. And as I walked on, so I walked on and wept silently. The fourth station, Jesus meets his grieving mother. I managed to break through the crowd and was walking side by side with my son. I called to him through the shouting voices. He stopped. Our eyes met. Mine full of tears of anguish, his full of pain and confusion. I felt helpless. Then his eyes said to me, "Courage. There is a purpose for this." As I stumbled on, I knew he was right. So I followed and prayed silently. The fifth station, Simon helps Jesus carry his cross. I could now see almost complete helplessness on the face of my son as he tried to carry his heavy load. Each step looked as if it would be his last. I felt his every pain in my heart, and I wanted the whole thing to end. Then I noticed some commotion near Jesus. The guard had pulled a protesting man from the crowd. They forced him to pick up the back of the cross to help lighten my son's load. He asked the guards why this had to be. I knew, and so followed silently.
On which is hung
The sixth station, Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. As I continued close by Jesus, a woman pushed past the guards, took off her veil, and began to wipe my son's sweating, bloody face. The guards immediately pulled her back. Her face seemed to say, "Why are you doing this to him?" I knew. So I walked on in faith, silently. Seventh station, Jesus falls the second time. Again my son fell, and again my grief was overwhelming at the thought that he might die. I started to move toward him, but the soldiers prevented me. He rose and stumbled ahead slowly. Seeing my son fall, get up again, and continue on was bitter anguish to me. But since I knew this had to be, I walked on silently. The eighth station, Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. I was walking a few steps behind Jesus when I saw him stop. Some women were there crying for him and pitying him. He told them not to shed tears for him. They had the opportunity to accept him as Savior, as Messiah. Like others, they had rejected him. Instead, he told them to shed tears for themselves, tears that would bring conversion. They did not see the connection between that and his walk to death. I did. And as he walked on, I followed silently. The ninth station, Jesus falls the third time. This fall of Jesus was agony to me. Not only had he fallen on the rocky ground again, but now he was almost at the top of the hill of crucifixion. The soldiers screamed at him and abused him, almost dragging him the last few steps. My heart pounded as I imagined what they would do to him next, but I knew this had to be. So I climbed the hill silently behind him. The 10th station, Jesus is stripped of his garments. With my son finally relieved of the weight of the cross, I thought he would have a chance to rest. But the guards immediately started to rip his clothes off his blood-clotted skin. The sight of my son in such pain was unbearable. Yet, since I knew this had to be, I stood by and cried silently. The 11th station, Jesus is nailed to the cross. As they threw Jesus on the cross, he willingly allowed himself to be nailed. As they punctured his hands and his feet, I felt the pain in my heart. Then they lifted him up the cross. There he was, my son, whom I love so much, being scorned as he struggled for the last few moments of earthly life. But I knew this had to be. So I stood by and prayed silently. The 12th station, Jesus dies on the cross. What greater pain is there for a mother than to see her son die right before her eyes? I, who had brought this Savior into the world, watched him grow, stood helplessly beneath his cross as he lowered his head and died. His earthly anguish was finished, but mine was greater than ever. Yet this had to be, and I had to accept it. So I stood by and mourned silently. The 13th station. Jesus is taken down from the cross. The crowd had gone. The noise had stopped. I stood quietly with one of Jesus' friends, and I looked up at the dead body of our Savior, my son. Then 2 men took the body from the cross, placed it in my arms. A deep sorrow engulfed my being, yet I also felt deep joy. Life had ended cruelly for my son, but it also brought life to all of us. I knew this had to be, and I prayed silently. The 14th station. Jesus is placed in the tomb. We brought Jesus' body to a tomb and arranged it there myself, silently weeping, silently rejoicing. I took one more look at my loving son and then walked out. They closed the tomb. Before I left, I thought, I knew this had to be. It had to be for you. I would wait in faith silently. That Behold the Way It Would of the Cross was from June, Jun Perez. And so that was off of YouTube. So thank you to June Perez. Thank you for joining us this day. Great to have you with us. May this coming weeks be holy for you. May it help us grow together in faith, hope, and love, and care for the most displaced in our world.